From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Kansas Week.
And the recount is on, in 2 electoral races no less. We take a look at the process and the costs. Plus, as the fight over the governor's office heats up, who's in the candidates' crosshairs and why does that involve you? But first, ready, set, bet. The announcement Kansas sports fans have been waiting for? It seems like years. That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. I'm Pilar Pedraza, and this is Kansas Week. What a difference a week makes, from uncertainty about when sports betting would finally get underway to a firm countdown to a start date. We begin with Cake's Jackson Overstreet and a look at the timeline unveiled late this week.
It's been a lot of sleepless nights for Stephen Durrell and the Kansas Lottery since sports betting was legalized in Kansas back in May.
It's been a very short but very busy process to try to get this done in a very reasonable amount of time.
But that hard work has paid off. On Thursday, the lottery announced September 1st as the soft launch date for sports betting in the state, with the official launch date the next week on September 8th to line up with the start of the NFL season.
It's a ramp-up period for people to get familiar with how the programs work and hopefully for us to get over any hurdles or smooth out any hiccups that may occur during that time frame.
It's a day that Boot Hill Casino Assistant General Manager Ryan Deitch says he wasn't sure would come this quickly.
I would describe it as a very fluid situation and day to day. Some days were better than others.
While the announcement was only made today, Boot Hill has been planning for sports betting for years now. The casino in Dodge City has already partnered with DraftKings to build a new sportsbook this fall.
And we plan to have it fully open by the end of January. In the meantime, we will have some temporary kiosks set up where customers can come in and make a bet through the kiosk.
While Boot Hill and DraftKings do have a partnership, platforms like that have not been fully approved by the Kansas Lottery yet, but Durrell says that should happen within the next week. He adds that they are anticipating a big response on launch day.
All my years with the lottery is something that I have never really experienced before.
And joining us to discuss this and other major headlines of the week, we welcome newcomer Kylie Cameron from the KMUW National Public Radio outlet here in Wichita, as well as we're welcoming back our Jackson Overstreet, Cake's secondary political reporter, along with me, and also a frequent provider for this show, panelist. Wow, I'm so excited about sports betting. I can't talk today, apparently. John Wright from KQAM Radio. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is a topic that has been discussed ad nauseum for a long time. We now have a date. How surprising, I know, Jackson, you've been covering this for a while. How surprising was it that we got that date when we did?
Well, they've just been so coy with everything. I know last week they had the big regulations that were passed, both with the Racing and Gaming Commission and then with the lottery itself. But they never said, we might have a date in a couple weeks, but they never said it's going to come this quick. And then I believe it was a sports radio reporter out of KC tweeted out on Tuesday night, Wednesday night saying this is going to be coming pretty quickly. Kansas Lottery retweeted it, kind of put the eye emojis, played a little around with it. And so we knew it was coming. Frankly, I didn't think they would be able to meet that September 1st date because they passed the bill back in May. And that's a sprint to get those regulations up. But talking to Stephen Durrell, the head of the lottery yesterday, they've been putting a lot of hours into this, and that's why they feel confident about that September 1st date.
Yeah, because I know when I was speaking with some industry experts, they were saying October, November, but I know a lot of sports fans in this state, they want it by the beginning of football season.
And that kicks off everything, literally, because if the state's going to be involved with the lottery through the casinos, they're going to try to mirror what Vegas is doing. And they want to put everything in place to make sure that it's going to be seamless. Now, the other end of that is, okay, we're going to bet my house. Is anyone going to just lose everything? It hasn't happened so far. That'd be a stretch to someone's going to put my mortgage down to hope to hit it big. I don't see that really happening. If it hadn't happened by now with the influx of casinos, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I know we've been hearing a lot about this from our viewers over at Cake, and I imagine you've probably been hearing a lot from listeners over at KMUW as well. What are they saying?
I think people are mostly just shocked, like we were talking about earlier, just how quickly it came up. I know, just even last week there was speculation, maybe mid-September, maybe around the time of football season, but now it's here and it just suddenly, bam, the news was there.
Yeah, 14 days and people can start placing bets. Another 7 after that, and the race is on.
And the big thing about it, why they wanted to hit that date, is because these sports books, one of the biggest bets they always get every year are your futures. So your win-loss totals, your over-unders, your stuff like that. You can't offer that if it's week 4 of the season because you've already changed everything. And so you have to, if you want to meet the start of that season, have those big futures bets that pay off in January and February. You've got to have that September 1st, or at least by September 8th, the kickoff date. That was the big date, and that's a huge reason why.
And we are talking about, this is a situation I've had lawmakers say that part of the reason we pass this is because everybody else is doing it. I had to go to Vegas a couple weeks ago for a professional conference, and no joke, everybody was doing it. Every street corner, every billboard was Sportsbook Live. So Kansas finally joining the pack.
And the market has just been saturated with FanDuel and all kind of betting apps, and so people really need to get in there, find out, so they are sports betting aware, so that they can navigate that area, because it's not like you go into the slot and just putting in a whatever and pulling the slot machine.
One-arm bandit.
One-arm bandit. So you do have to be sports aware, but there's a lot of flights in and out of Vegas, and Wichitans and Kansas. They get it from both sides, going to Atlantic Casino, then you go out to West Vegas. So they understand it. It's just amazing to me that it did go that quick, Jackson, because of what we've seen in the past with just going to a Greyhound track, and we see how that was resisted and pushed back, and now all of a sudden this, something's going on. I don't know what it is, but it seems a bit of a push to all of a sudden, okay, let's go Kansas, coming out of the conservative into the world of sports bets.
Yeah, so we're going to have to watch and see what happens there. I doubt this is the last time we're going to talk about this topic on Kansas Week. Another major change for Kansas company this week, as workers at a Wichita Starbucks became the first in Kansas to vote for unionization. With a twist, they formed their own union to do it. This week, by a vote of 9-6, the National Labor Relations Board says workers chose to unionize the Starbucks location at 8008 East Central in Wichita. It's the third Kansas Starbucks to vote on unionization, the first to actually do it. When Cake News visited the store after the vote was counted, it was closed for remodeling. According to a note on the door, it's set to reopen September 1st. Workers first filed the petition to unionize back in May, but filings show Starbucks argued they weren't a real union. Workers at this store appear to have formed their own union under the name of Central and Rock Partners Union, rather than join an already established labor organization. There are around 30 employees at the store. Only 15 of them actually voted. This vote came as Starbucks corporate petitioned the National Labor Relations Board to temporarily suspend all U.S. union elections involving the company, citing what it called irregularities in the Overland Park vote earlier this year. Becoming a union allows workers to fight for things like better pay and better benefits. Some local frequent Starbucks customers we spoke with say this is a good thing.
Workers taking control of their schedules and their work ends up actually being more productive. They're going to get, better employees. They're going to get happier customers.
I believe that it's good for a person to have a flexible schedule and get a pay that is pretty decent now, because with gas prices going on and everything's getting really high, and I believe everyone should be paid pretty fairly.
The 9-6 vote is an unofficial result at this time. Both sides have 5 days to file any complaints about the way the election was handled. Then the NLRB will certify the final results. And all of this, of course, coming on the heels of all that national news. I know KMUW broke the news of this vote. How closely were you following this action?
Well, our reporter, Daniel Cottrell, has been this is his thing. Labor, unions, it's his thing. And so he's really, really been digging in on this. And this is, I don't know, it's just been his thing. And he's really been focused on it, really been focused on building those relationships with union organizers, reaching out to Starbucks whenever things happen to get a statement. Obviously, it's the same, we don't appreciate unions, or we don't like this sort of blanket statement that they always give everyone. But he's really put in the work.
And as we look at all of this, John, certainly a change from what you and I have maybe seen over the years, because Kansas is a right-to-work state that has not always been friendly to unions.
No, not really. From picket line to union voting, machinist voting, and with the aircraft industry and the S word, I don't want to mention that, but which is associated with unions, unfortunately, things do happen. But when I was watching this develop, it's a change in thought process to being acceptive with the employees there to, number one, step up and say, hey, let's make this happen across the company. And here's the company saying, well, we're going to fire you if you do it. So it's not quite the 1960s and 70s response. Well, we're going to cross the picket line, if you will, but to have everyone across the country within the same company step up and try to form, whether you get fired or not, that takes a lot of willpower and trust in your coworker to not only depend on your vote, but they're also depending on what you're going to bring to the table and how this salary issue and the benefits package and who you're going to trust to make those negotiations for you with the company. Is it going to be individualized, or is it going to be all, as we're seeing, it looks like it's piece by piece?
Yeah. Yep, kind of, Jackson, in some ways, part and parcel of the great resignation that we've been seeing and the increased power that workers across the country have.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done how many stories at Cake talking about any sort of industry having this issue, but I think this is also a very big byproduct of the pandemic, because the service workers were by far some of the most affected when they had to go back the soonest, they had to deal with most people and all that stuff. And so finally they're saying, we're sick of it. A lot of these industries don't have a union, don't have a strong union, so they have to do it their own. And I think it's honestly a lot of people, me and Kylie's age, maybe even younger than us, they're reading about unions like, wow, this is a great concept, us banding together to be able to get better pay. And they haven't had to deal with some of the union busting and stuff like that we've seen in the past. And so they've got this positive image of it. So like, let's go do this together. There's a lot more collectivist viewpoint, I think, especially coming out of the pandemic by a lot of people this age.
All right. Well, the last week has been a busy one in the race for governor as well, from campaign visits to Wichita to new endorsements and a poll showing us how close the race is right now. Monday, both Governor Laura Kelly and her challenger, Kansas Attorney General Derek Schmidt, were in Wichita to make their case for your support. While here, Schmidt attacked Kelly's record on education and the economy, saying Kansas has not fully recovered from the 2020 COVID shutdown. He believes the state economy isn't as healthy and strong as the governor is painting it.
The bottom line is what we need is healthy economic growth throughout our state regionally, throughout the different sectors of our economy, and that's not where we are right now. We are not on a healthy, sustainable path for the future of our state. We have to turn that around.
And so it's very clear that they need that $50 million, and they also need the Spark Committee to allocate the $25 million that we've got so that they can go ahead and get RFPs out and get this work done.
Dr. Neil Allen from Wichita State University says voters tend to vote their pocketbook. When they've got money to spend, they vote for the incumbent. But when jobs disappear and finances get tight, challengers do better at the ballot box. Except, Allen said, Kansas is caught right in the middle on that right now. We have plenty of jobs to go around, yet at the same time, finances have been tight thanks to inflation, even if that has started coming back down in recent weeks.
What inflation are voters going to think about when they go to vote? Is it going to be the prices that they've seen staying stable or even dropping for the last 2 or 3 months, maybe? Or is it going to be the substantial increase in prices that we've seen in the last year and a half?
Governor Laura Kelly's campaign Wednesday announced a bipartisan group of 50 farmers and ranchers from across the state were endorsing her bid for re-election. The governor's campaign team tells me about a third of Wednesday's agricultural endorsements come from Republicans, another 10% from unaffiliated voters.
When we make our decisions, we try to be real practical about it.
So why farmers? Well, Laura Kelly needs every vote she can get in this race for the governor's office, as evidenced by a new poll released just this week. It comes from a nonprofit organization that has donated to a PAC that supports Derek Schmidt. This poll shows Derek Schmidt in the lead with 47.9% of voter support. Laura Kelly coming in second with 45.4%. Dennis Pyle on the board with 2.1%.
She wants to show that even though there's not much likelihood that she'll do well in rural Kansas, that she still has support out there and that she is still willing to reach out to rural voters.
Political analyst Dr. Russell Arbin Fox says while farmers traditionally vote more Republican, showing some still support Kelly helps her with moderate Republican voters in the cities who might be leery of recent turns the party has taken.
They see the strong push for, abortion restrictions, and they see the close association people like Chris Kobach have with Donald Trump.
And a quick note, the margin of error in that poll that we were talking about, 4%, which is quite larger than the 2.5% separating them. And if you've covered politics, you know that means it's a statistical dead heat at this point.
And I think the interesting thing there you saw on your graphic there, also Dennis Pyle, he's in the race, as we know, third candidate running as an independent. He has a big chance to play spoiler because if it's already this close and he's pulling 3% of the vote from Derek Schmidt, that makes a already tight race incredibly tighter.
Yeah, and a lot of concerns on the Republican Party side because of that.
Well, I would be interested to see what Derek Schmidt's numbers are when he's alleging that the state is not in as tidy shape financially. Yes, we had inflation. We've seen that at the pump. We're still seeing it in the grocery stores. So where is it within the state government and that the shortfall is happening? Who's not getting their checks? What parents and caregivers are not receiving their financial? What parents are not getting their WIC program? So if he's talking about financially the state is failing, well, those people would scream the loudest because they're not going to be impacted the hardest. Yeah. So, and by the way, he does have a record, if you believe all the advertisement.
Well, that's a whole nother question.
Okay, so he does have a record. He's talking about Governor Kelly's record. Well, he has one too. So
he spent several years in the state Senate.
And it would behoove the voters to dig into that and see what comes up and make your educated choice.
And talking about the farmer support there, obviously Kelly announcing 50 farmers supporting her, but that's out of a huge number of farmers across the state. Yeah. And I've actually since heard from others who are like, we're very unhappy with what she did, especially that Apex bill. A lot of voters very unhappy about that Apex bill and the NDAs in it and just the lack of transparency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one thing that's interesting about the farmer endorsements she's putting out there, we saw with them both, there was a big difference between voters who voted for Trump and voters who voted for no and voted for yes. And so trying to win over maybe parts of Western Kansas where it is a more moderate Republican, maybe don't like the state house and stuff like that, that I think is a very interesting wedge to try to kind of get there.
I really think it's going to come down to what is happening around Election Day. Mm-hmm. What really drives people to the polls, and we've seen this since 2016, beyond that, is anger, it's fear. I think that's, what drove the vote no out. You saw abortion bans, just straight bans in Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and that really got that base upset, and that's what took them and drove them to the polls. And so it really matters about what's going on around that time.
Yeah. That has to do with the farm bill. It has to do with as she mentioned about what's happening now. There's a lot of farm country out there that they want a fair price for their market, for the good, whether it's meal or whether it's cattle or whatever it is. They want a fair price to be able to make a profit. They just don't want to plow the ground under and get paid by the government.
Yep. Well, you may have noticed a quick mention of a third candidate for governor as we were discussing this, independent Dennis Pyle, except his candidacy isn't quite official yet, and that's got him frustrated. The Kansas Reflector reports Dennis Pyle is dissatisfied with the pace of the Secretary of State's office's efforts to verify signatures on his petition to be included on the November ballot as an independent candidate for governor. Pyle said the office certified Greg Orman's 2018 petition to be an independent gubernatorial candidate in just 11 days, but it's already been longer than that for Pyle, who submitted his petition on August 1st. This comes after the Kansas Republican Party told voters in a text message how they could remove their names from Pyle's petition back in early August. The argument? The Kansas GOP says Pyle would draw enough voters from Derek Schmidt to let Laura Kelly win in November. I hope we are not seeing the Secretary of State applying a double standard, Pyle told The Reflector. We've already seen the dubious actions taken by the establishment GOP leadership. I hope we're not seeing insider collaboration by the Secretary of State's office based upon party loyalty oaths. And of course, we've already mentioned the possibility of Pyle playing the spoiler in this race. Certainly every political analyst I've spoken with has kind of had that same thought line, John, and we've seen it before, and we saw it with Greg Orman.
And it's not unusual in these type of races when you have close the candidates from the established parties, and here comes a third-party candidate who might offer a bit of a different wedge into the platforms of the two existing candidates to try to pull those voters that are on the fence. They really haven't decided, but they hear something. It may not be a landslide of votes, but just enough to tip it one way or another. So Pyles, he's going to have a significant role in the outcome of this governor's race, whether he really realizes it or not. Now, if he's going after one of them, of course, that behooves the other candidate. So it just depends on who he's going to support if it looks like he's not going to make an impact.
And certainly name recognition comes into play with this as well. Dennis Pyle has been in the state Senate for a number of years, but perhaps if people know him at all, it's for the 2015 tax increase debate when he brought stink bait onto the Senate floor. I was sitting right behind him at the time and going, please don't open it. But a lot of Kansans just really don't know him, and we know from covering politics, name recognition matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Dennis Pyle, I mean, obviously pretty into the state house and everything, obviously in case ledge, but you know, does he have that statewide recognition? You know, it's not just the area that he represents, but outside of that area, do people actually know him?
Yeah.
I was going to say one other thing that might be interesting about him, if he does play the spoiler role, is that I think we have a lot more people nowadays who are willing to vote based on their beliefs, not just necessarily the party. We see that a lot more. It's very polarized for a lot of voters, like I was saying. It's a lot of fear when they go to the polls, unless that's the best way to get people out. If Pyle can really kind of jump up, you know, I am the conservative person, I'm all this stuff, that definitely has a chance to get people, I'd rather vote for a conservative and lose than vote for a non-conservative and have them win.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big aspect of his base.
Yeah, a couple of points there is Pyle has been a member of the Republican Party, a conservative voice in that party for a number of years. So he has a long record there. And so, yeah, he's going to pull conservative votes, which perhaps is why he's not gotten the same reaction that John Dahl did 4 years ago when he left the Republican Party to run as an independent for governor. And it was just like, okay, whatever. But Dahl was a moderate. So that conservative versus moderate position matters.
And even then, that was then, and this is now, and the stories are getting more fantastic. So if they can attract the ears of the voters, say this candidate did X, Y, Z, but here we are over here. We are in your corner. We're going to help you. And my only concern is the transparency during these campaigns. Are they going to skew to try to fill the shoes of the predecessors of the national level to pull those votes, or are they going to stick with the local issues to get into the governor's office?
All right. Well, we've still got many a month left in that race as we wait for November. Kansas on Tuesday began a partial hand recount of this month's decisive statewide vote in favor of abortion rights, a move forced by two Republican activists. Even though the margin was so large, experts say the recount won't change the outcome. 9 of the state's 105 counties are doing the recount, including, as Cake's Jackson Overstreet once again shows us, Central County.
Jennifer McCoy is watching as Sedgwick County election workers go through ballot by ballot of the votes cast in the August 2nd primary.
Wanting to make sure of the integrity of our elections, because that mattered to me more than anything.
Sedgwick County is one of 9 Kansas counties that are part of a partial recount of the Value Them Both amendment results. In total, all 81 Election Day precincts in Sedgwick County, along with the 14 early voting precincts, plus mail and provisional ballots, will be sorted through. Workers started as early as 7 a.m. counting ballots.
They'll sort those by precinct and get those all in their groups because that's how they have to be reported. After they're sorted by precinct, then the team of bipartisan workers will take and look at the ballot and decide whether it says yes, it says no, it says nothing, or it says both.
Coy says she was at the Sedgwick County Extension Office right when the first ballot was counted. And so far, watching the process has been a learning experience.
There's so much I don't know about how all this works. So just learning, seeing, asking questions, it's been real eye-opening.
And that's what Election Commissioner Angela Caudillo hopes people who watch the recount get out of the experience.
Transparency is a great part of it. People can just come in and look and see what's happening and see the process we go through.
It's showing that we still have some sort of checks and balances, and they're working out the bugs too.
And in addition to the abortion amendment recount, there is also a recount going on in 5 counties in the state treasurer's race, which was decided by less than 400 votes. So that one less of a surprise, I think. That difference in votes, Kylie, really is why I think so many people were surprised that there was a recount in the abortion amendment vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been reported, in the Wichita Eagle that their whole point behind this recount right now, at least for Mark Geetson, is, the discrepancies. He wants to use that to help him in his lawsuit that he has with the county about the ballot drop boxes. Obviously, that got thrown out and, didn't proceed on in court. But these people tend to just genuinely believe that ballot boxes are being stuffed without real solid sound evidence. And I mean, even in the courthouse when I was reporting on when I was reporting on his lawsuit, somebody with the election office was there, wasn't Angela, but somebody with the election office was there and said, well, if they are trying to stuff the ballot boxes, they're doing a pretty poor job since there's only 800 that we've collected so far, and this was couple days before the election.
Yeah, and there were some concerns that you had, John, about access for observers. Not so much that they couldn't get in, but who could get
But who could get in? What's the process to be an observer? Most of the people that I've spoken with regarding this would rather be a poll worker to assist in the process, to sign people up, to make sure their IDs match, and so that you can go in and vote. As a voter, this time I went paper instead of machine. So are they trying to say someone messed around with my ballot and it didn't get to where they were supposed to be? Or they didn't look on the back to make sure that I voted where we were supposed to vote? Or is this just, okay, they pick it up, tear it up, and throw it away, so it's going to spend all this money, but for why? It's a process that has been working.
Okay, and we're going to have to leave it right there. We are out of time. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you have enjoyed our discussion. For now, stay safe and have a great week.